everyone. My name is Dr. Jennifer McKelvey. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I'm currently the director of the Adult Outpatient Psychiatric Department and the Crisis Clinic at Zucker Hillside Hospital, which is part of Northwell Health. So today I'll be giving a talk on some coping strategies that you can use, especially in this time during the pandemic when stress is so much higher. So just to dive in, let's get started. So there are a lot of things that can contribute to stress in our lives. And so the most obvious thing right now being the pandemic and a lot of the stressors around that being isolated, not being able to have contact with friends, that kind of thing can absolutely contribute to stress. But then there are other things that can also contribute to stress. So things that we normally think about, like conflict in the family, work stress, that type of thing, but also happy events can contribute to stress as well. So things like traveling or weddings, that kind of thing can also contribute to stress. And something we might not think about as immediately is our thinking style. So our thinking styles can definitely contribute to more anxiety, definitely, and more stress. So there was a psychologist, his name was Albert Ellis, and he developed something called rational emotive behavior therapy. And in that therapy, he talks about the tyranny of the shoulds, or our internal dialogue that sort of contributes to stress that we almost put on ourselves. So we think that we should do something or shouldn't do something. And a lot of the time when we have that internal dialogue going on, we don't necessarily have the motivation to actually do the things that we think we should or shouldn't do. Another thing that can contribute to stress is all or nothing thinking. So if you've ever heard the phrase like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, sort of, chucking the whole thing out because one aspect of it doesn't work. And so that's something that we can work on as well to help alleviate stress. And I'll get into that in just a moment. And then rumination. We might think of anxious rumination. So you're going to bed and you're either going back over your day that just happened and it's just spinning in circles, or thinking about something that has to happen the next day that you're worried about. And it can be really hard to let go of that, especially in the evening, I think, is when a lot of people experience that because there's less activity and less stimuli in our environment. So we're kind of left alone with our thoughts. So we can also talk about the effects of stress on our bodies. So there's the fancy name for it is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So it's the HPA axis. And that is associated with cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline that sort of floods your body. So if you can think of a time when you've been really frightened, all of a sudden, and that's your fight or flight response. So if you think of turning around, you see a bear as, oh no, that's that flood of cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine really helps your body get ready to either fight the bear off or run away from the bear. And so when that's constant, so constant sort of low level activation of that axis, it can definitely contribute to problems down the line. So this doesn't mean that these things will happen, not in the least. It's just things that could potentially happen. So a lot of us experience muscle tension and fatigue in relation to stress and lack of motivation, really. Migraines can happen, high blood pressure, being more susceptible to illness in general, loss of libido, respiratory conditions, inflammatory conditions. So, right? It seems like that would be an awful lot to deal with. So we figure out how to cope with stress. And I found this on the internet, and it reminds me sometimes of my day that I just want to bang my head against something, which is really not a good idea. But I thought this was just fun to have on my wall, and so I can think of it when I'm feeling especially stressed out at work. But how do you usually cope? A lot of people develop very naturally coping skills over the course of growing up. So I think a lot of us try to ignore it and hope that it goes away. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. So, but developing better skills can definitely come in handy. Some people eat more, call it stress eating, tend to go for the carbs and the fried stuff and all the heavy foods that help us feel sort of heavier and more relaxed. Some people get irritable or angry, so snapping at people when you don't mean to, yelling at people when you're driving in the car, that kind of thing. Some people smoke, usually cigarettes. We won't talk about other stuff. You shouldn't smoke other stuff, but cigarettes, and you shouldn't smoke cigarettes either. But some people smoke more. Some people sleep more. So you might go from your normal 7 or 8 hours to sleeping 10 to 12 hours sometimes, or you might sleep less. And that can tie back into that rumination cycle, right? So that rumination cycle keeping you up, so then you're not sleeping as much. And so other people might go shopping. And that's the thing that Amazon, I'm sure, is making a lot of money off of. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. We might cut that part out. But some people shop more. Some people drink alcohol more. And if you listen to the news, there has been an uptick in purchasing alcohol. And then a lot of people hear a lot about parties that people are having. And some people, sort of going back to the rumination, might worry or ruminate. Some people might withdraw because they don't want to put their burdens on other people, or they feel like talking about it doesn't help. Some people might punch or throw or break or tear things. And that can be effective more or less, depending on the circumstance. But, it's really not the most adaptive way to cope with stress. But there is hope. And I used this particular cartoon because adult coloring has become really popular in the last couple of decades. And so it's definitely an option for you to engage in, because there are a lot of interesting coloring books. They're not very expensive, and so it can help you sort of get out of your mind and do something else, and so you can maybe feel and get into a Zen moment. And then, like I was talking about before, with the unhelpful thinking, you can sort of what we call reality test. So look at the evidence for and against something. So if you're up at night and you're worrying and things are spinning around in your head, look at the evidence for and against whatever it is that you're worrying about, and it can help you find a more balanced way to look at things. Use ands instead of buts. So that might sound a little strange at the beginning. If you think about a phrase that, like, I love you, but there's this thing that you do that really frustrates me. If you use the word but, it sort of cancels out the first half of your sentence. So the I love you goes away, and the focus is really on the person doing this thing that upsets you. Whereas you can have both. you can love the person, and they can do things that upset you. But one doesn't have to cancel out the other. You can replace the shoulds and the shouldn'ts with all sorts of different things. So you can replace it with, I would like. So I would like it if I went to the gym more frequently. And that can help it become more palatable and more doable, let's say, as opposed to I should. Well, we're not very good at following our shoulds, but we're fairly good at following our I would likes. And then interrupting the rumination cycle, we'll get to that one in a little bit, because a lot of the skills I'm going to talk about in the rest of this can be used to interrupt that rumination cycle. So breathing, right? We often tell each other to breathe a lot. Take a breath, count to 10, that kind of thing. And so I was thinking about that recently, and I imagined sort of a conversation that would go something like this. So the first person is saying to somebody who's stressed out, breathe, take a breath. And the second person is saying, well, I breathe all the time. I'm fairly good at it, and it's not helping. And the first person might then go back to, well, do you know how to breathe? Well, of course you do. You've been doing it for a long time or a short time, but you're fairly skilled at it because you're still here, right? So you might try this. And it's a really basic skill that you can take anywhere with you. Inhale for 3, and then exhale for any number, as long as it's more than 3. So we want the exhale to be longer than the inhale. So in for 3, and let's say out for 5. And it can just be through your nose, it can just be through your mouth, whichever is easiest for you. And then just repeat that and really focus on counting for yourself. So in for 3, and I might go do out for 6. And so you might notice in my body as I'm doing that, my shoulders tend to drop as I exhale, right? And so you're sort of training your body to go into that relaxation by focusing on your breath. And so I found this really handy when I'm driving, standing in the checkout line at the grocery store, that kind of thing, when I find myself getting sort of revved up and frustrated and stressed. So that is definitely something that you can try whenever. Then there's also something we call release relaxation. And it's fairly simple to do. It takes a little bit longer than just breathing. One of the most important things is how you're sitting, right? So you sit in a comfortable position. You can put your forearms on the arms of your chair. You can rest your hands in your lap, your feet flat on the floor, and then either close your eyes or look down. It can be either, whatever you're most comfortable with. Sometimes we don't want to shut our eyes, and that's okay. And so to start with your forehead and just focusing on this upper area right here where we tend to get a lot, and I have a lot of wrinkles, and just to relax it and focus on those muscles and really let them just sort of drop. So you might feel your eyes start to get a little heavier, and let all of those muscles relax, because we forget we hold a lot of tension in our foreheads. So start there, and then move your focus down to your eyes and just let them relax. And so all around your temples, right, from your forehead down to your eyes, And then working down into your mouth and jaw, which I can't do right now because I'm talking, but letting all of those muscles relax. So your teeth might separate, your tongue might be on the floor of your mouth as opposed to lifted up at the roof of your mouth. And then if you're focusing really hard on that, I like to have people go back to their forehead and work their way down again. Just because when we're concentrating really hard, sometimes that tension comes back into our forehead. And then moving down to your neck and your shoulders and just letting them drop, not to push them down, just to let them hang naturally. And then move back to your shoulder blades, the front of your chest, and then down through your torso, down through your buttocks and into your legs, and down to your feet. You can wiggle your toes. Sometimes, people, when they're concentrating hard, it shows up in different places. So it might be your hands or your feet. So just making sure those are relaxed, and then circling back to your forehead again. And so you might notice that your forehead got more tight again, but you can just work on releasing it and just cycle through a couple of times. So it's moving from your forehead all the way down through your toes, and then just checking in with the various parts of you to see if you've maintained that sense of relaxation. And just the process of focusing on your physicality can help get you out of a lot of the stress, at least for a few minutes, and help sort of distract you from the rumination cycle. And so another thing that I've discovered in conversation with people is finding your happy place. And so I like to change that up a little bit, because the way I think of happy is a high, right? And just like depression is a low. And for me, the goal is being content. So just being sort of a straight line, humming along, and then you might have some lows and you might have some highs. So I prefer to call it your calm or contented place. And so this is a place that you build within your imagination, right? And it can be anywhere, and anywhere you can think of. So the pictures I have are all sorts of different places. It might be by the water, by a lake, by an ocean, in the desert, in a cabin in the woods, in the snow, or in a cave, wherever it is that you find that really calm and contented place, right? And then you have to, well, not have to, but you imbue it with every sense that you can engage, right? So it can be the smell of the ocean, or of foliage and fir trees, or the dryness of the desert, right? Or humidity as well. And so just building with all of your senses. So taste and touch, and how does the air feel? What are you sitting on or reclining on? The human mind is very powerful. So we can imagine something and actually have a physical response to it. So if you think of something like a lemon, and think of it really, really detailed. So you're holding a lemon in your hand, and you feel the bumpiness of the peel, and you lift it up to your nose, and you can smell that fresh lemony scent, and it's bright yellow. And so you roll it on your counter to release some of the juice on the inside, cut it in half, and that aroma just wafts up to your nose. And if you just touch it to your tongue and you pucker, right, A lot of people, when imagining something in that much detail, will have a physical reaction to something like a lemon and actually either start to salivate or their mouth gets really dry, depending on what your response is to a lemon. So you can harness those aspects of your mind to really help you in relieving some stress. And then, so in psychology, we talk about self-soothing. And there are a lot of different things that you can do to self-soothe. Drinking tea, some people drink tea, not everyone. Some people drink coffee to relax, so that's an option as well. Scented wax melts are definitely an option and very prevalent in a lot of different stores. Flowers, buying yourself some flowers, growing flowers, that type of thing. Scented lotion, those are very readily available. I have 3 or 4 in my office. Dark chocolate, there's been a decent amount of research on dark chocolate, and so in moderation, dark chocolate can definitely help relieve stress. Scented soap, and then lavender and vanilla as maybe an essential oil or a body wash or anything like that. The interesting thing about lavender and vanilla are that if you've ever heard of endorphins, so there's something called a runner's high. When somebody has been running for an extended period of time, it releases endorphins in their brain, which are sort of feel-good substances that naturally occur in your brain. And it helps elevate your mood. So lavender and vanilla as a scent both cause sort of a release of endorphins in your brain, which can help elevate your mood a little bit. It's not going to make you super happy, but it'll help lift your spirits a little bit. And then I bring up lime and orange just because they're my favorite, and they're, in so many things, so that you can, as you're washing your hands and you have a lime or lemon or orange scented hand soap, use that and just focus on that to give yourself a little break from stress. And then movement. So these days, during a pandemic, we find that we're sitting a lot, and probably a lot more than we're used to. And many, many studies in a lot of different areas of mental and physical health let us know that movement is really helpful in helping you feel better and helping you feel healthier. So move. It can be anything. I walk around my office sometimes because often I'm sitting here for 3 or 4 hours in meetings or seeing patients, and I'm not active enough. So you can do something like that. I often suggest that people put on headphones or play some music and just dance around your home. And if you're not comfortable dancing in front of people, you can go into another room, go into your bathroom, whatever works for you. And whatever music sort of spurs you to move. And that can be incredibly helpful in helping to lift your mood. And then just chair stretching. So if you're not able to dance or move around a lot for whatever reason, just sitting in your chair and stretching like you would like when you're getting up in the morning. And just doing that periodically helps get your blood flowing a little bit, helps us not get so locked into sort of melting into our couches, and sort of helps your body function a little better. So when you stand up, you're not as stiff like me and shuffle around. And then you can build a self-soothing kit. So it can be anything really. It can be a small bag, it could be a Ziploc bag, it could be a tin that candies or mints came in, and it's just finding things that you find soothing. So it could be a little piece of faux fur, or a little chime, or tea, or some kind of mint or gum or anything like that. And it should be something small so you can carry it with you wherever you go. And then if you're having a bad day at work, you go into the restroom, you can, have a mint, take a moment, practice your breathing, and then go back out and feel a little better about sort of plunging back into things. And it's important to have those things with you, because you can't carry puppies and kittens around all day. And I adore puppies and kittens. And no, you can't carry them around even if they're super tiny and cute, like these two. So self-soothing kits can definitely help relieve some of that stress in the moment, wherever you are. And then sleep hygiene. Well, we're not often good at being skilled in addressing our sleep. So moving or exercising daily is very important. It helps sort of work out some of that anxious or stressed energy so that you can lay quietly and hopefully fall asleep. Limit your alcohol, especially before bed. So yes, it helps you feel more relaxed and it might help you fall asleep more quickly, but it interrupts the normal phases of sleep that we need to go through every night in order to feel refreshed when we get up in the morning. So it's well known in medicine that that's something that alcohol does. So just in moderation, right? Lay off the caffeine, or figure out for yourself when you need to lay off of the caffeine. So I personally can't have caffeine after 6 p.m. because then I'm up much later than I would like to be. And so if you lay off of it at 6, at 9, at 4, whatever your body tells you, it's best to switch over to something like milk or water or decaffeinated tea or oat milk. I mean, whatever works best for you, but limit your caffeine. And then have a sleep schedule. So I've discovered in the people, with myself and the people that I work with, that if we have a schedule that we stick to every day, sleep is much better. So if you get up at the same time every day, try to go to bed at the same time every day, then getting into that rhythm helps your body get prepared for sleeping. So your body and your mind being integrated kind of know when you're getting ready for bed because you've built that good sleep schedule. I can also suggest having a notepad next to your bed. So if you're like me and you're sort of winding down and going back over your day and you think, oh no, I forgot to do this one thing that was really important, write it down. Have that notepad next to your bed, and then you can leave it until the morning because you won't forget. You wrote it down. So that can be really important to have. If you can't sleep for about 30 minutes, you're either laying there with your mind spinning in circles, or you're tossing and turning and just can't get comfortable, get out of bed, right? Get out of bed, go do something else. Go sit in a chair in low light, listen to some music, have some tea or some water. Just a couple of things that you really shouldn't do is watch television Play on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, because the backlight that shines into your eyes tends to activate the part of our brain that responds to light and dark. So basically, the part of your brain that lets you know when it's time to go to bed and time to wake up. And so if we're activating it at night because of looking at things that are backlit, it's basically telling you that you're supposed to be awake. And so it's best not to be on your electronics in the evening when you'd rather be asleep. So going back to the good old fashioned reading a book or the newspaper or something like that is the best way to sort of get yourself back into being able to go to sleep. And as many times as that needs to happen, that cycle of getting up after 30 minutes of tossing, turning, just keep doing that, because then you're also training your body to respond to laying in bed as being someplace where you sleep and not someplace where you stay up and play games on your phone. You can try also putting a damp cloth over your eyes and forehead, which can help give you a sense of weight. In one of my other lectures, I had somebody bring up a weighted blanket. So that can be very helpful as well if you respond to that. If you remember the release relaxation exercise that I spoke about earlier, the one starting with your forehead, moving down into your eyes and through the rest of your body, that can be very helpful when you're trying to go to sleep as well. And then try not to judge, right? Because it goes back into the shoulds. We lay there thinking, I should be asleep. Well, yeah, okay, but you're not. So berating yourself about it is not really helping. And so going back to some of the self-soothing, writing things, jotting things down on a notepad, putting that damp cloth over your eyes can be more helpful than just telling yourself that you should be asleep or you shouldn't be worrying. Then there is CBT for insomnia. So that's cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia specifically. And there are practitioners in the community who are skilled in this form of CBT. It's just maybe calling your insurance and finding out if they cover that kind of service, and that can definitely be helpful. And then a sleep study. So if you are chronically tired because your sleep is restless or anything like that, having a sleep study can get down to the core of what some of the issues are, as well as visit your primary care doctor, because we're often not good at that, and just we need to check in with them every year and just make sure that your body is in the best shape it can be. And then, so if you have chronic issues with sleep, between checking in with your primary care doctor and a sleep study, there might be a solution in there. So it's something that you can look into. And then nutrition. Well, goodness, I talked before about stress, and that leading to stress eating tends to be carbohydrate heavy, fats heavy, we want more fried food. It makes us feel, it might help you feel better in the moment, but is not really the best for you in the long run. So having fresh fruits and vegetables, be kind of light on the oils. It doesn't mean you can't have or shouldn't have any of those things. It's just moderation, and having the larger portion of your diet being fresh fruits and vegetables will help you feel better both in mind and body, and really build resilience to stress. So between, I think, sleep and nutrition, when we're depleted on those, I think those are major contributors to our stress reactions, right? So if you think of being tired or being hungry and you're hit with a stressor, we tend to not necessarily deal with it as well because of that. So when your nutrition is good and your sleep is good, it helps us deal with stress much more effectively. And then pacing and balancing. If you're one of those people that tends to work 10, 12, 14-hour days, try to take mini breaks. It can be 3 minutes every couple of hours, whatever you can find in your day to just take a moment. You know, if you have something soft in your self-soothing kit, just pull that out of your pocket or your handbag or the drawer of your desk and focus on that for a few seconds and then put it away and go on with your day. You can also do an eye relaxation. So it's gently just putting the palms of your hands over your eyes and then try to see the darkness behind your eyes. So when I close my eyes, I tend to try and look for little bursts of color, which is normal for your eyes to do because they're being basically deprived of stimuli. So it's just looking for that darkness and really focusing on that. And so do that for a couple of minutes. It can help give you a break from stress. You can also use metaphorical images. So imagine an image that represents tension. So I tend to think of maybe a cat with its fur all poofed out, and that might be my image for tension. And then if I gradually replace that with an image for relaxation, so maybe the same cat and the fur is smooth and their eyes are kind of sleepy, then my body will respond to that, sort of tying back to how powerful our mind is. My body might respond to that image of relaxation that I've used to replace that image of tension. And then something also that we can think about as a side note to a lot of the skills that I've talked about today, they're all a lot tied into mindfulness, but we might not think of them as such. And mindfulness is something that you can do at any time. And it's really about being in the moment, really focusing on your experience of that moment. So even if it's washing your hands or washing the dishes, really focusing on what you're doing. So the smell of the dish soap, the sound of the bubbles, they sort of make a crackling sound as they're bursting. The clink of dishes in the sink. Just involving yourself in that can help sort of diffuse stress for a few minutes. And that's typically called everyday mindfulness. So you don't have to have a formal mindfulness practice to really get better at being mindful and being in the moment. And then I like to talk about what the definition is of works, right? So what do you mean when you say something works or doesn't? So we tend to sort of fall back into that all or nothing thinking that, well, I tried this skill and it didn't work, so I'm not going to use it again. Well, it might work at a different time. So what does works mean? Does work mean it completely alleviates all your stress? I mean, that would be nice, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And having it at least decrease is acceptable. So figure out what your definition is of works and see if you can be a little bit more flexible if it tends to be very constrained. And no single thing will work all the time to alleviate stress. So our emotions really occur for a reason. They are giving us signals about things going on within ourselves, in the world. And so paying attention to them can be really important. And they're never completely going to go away. They are natural to have. So no single thing, no single skill is going to alleviate everything all the time. It's just figuring out what your sort of grab bag of skills could be. And some stress is harder to get rid of than others. So sometimes it's not necessarily going to alleviate as fully, but you can journal about it. Rate your stress on a scale from 1 to 10 before you use a skill, and then rate it again after you use a skill. And that way you have an idea of, how effective a given strategy will be for you. And then mix and match. You can use scented wax melts and flowers, whatever works for you. And so in closing, thank you very much for having me. And I just wanted to put out there, Northwell Health has something called our CARES program. And it is for individuals who have experienced COVID, so they've been sick with the illness, and are now experiencing any kind of psychiatric issues. And so you can call the number below, 718-470-8428, and clinical staff will call you and do a quick screening just to figure out what your needs are and how we can best help you. And then if we're able to, we will schedule you for an intake with our clinic where you can continue with services, or we can refer you into the community to get services. So it's just a resource that you can hook into, and who knows, you might actually talk to me because I'm one of the clinical staff that answers that phone line. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. My name is Dr. Jennifer McKelvey. I'm the director of the Adult Outpatient Psychiatry Department at Zucker Hillside Hospital. Have a good day.